It's my great pleasure to have been asked yesterday to introduce Cindy McCain and Governor Christie. The Harpers have had the special privilege of being friends with the McCains for many years, social friends, political friends, and great admirers of the family. Cindy is a remarkable person, and she's known for her incredible service to the community, to the country, and to the world. She has a passion for doing things right and making the world better. Cindy, after her education at USC in special ed, became a teacher at Agua Fria High School in special ed and had a successful career there. She also progressed to become the leader of the family company, Hensley and Company, and continues to lead them to great heights. Cindy's interest in the world and special issues has become very apparent over the years. She serves on the board of the Halo Trust. She serves on the board of Operation Smile and of CARE. But her special leadership as part of the McCain Institute and her special interest and where her heart is now is in conquering the terrible scourge of human trafficking and bringing those victims of human trafficking to a full, free life as God intended them to have. I want to tell you just a quick personal experience with the McCains. Sharon and I will socialize with them often, and we'll say, well, what are you going to be doing next week, Sharon or Ollie? And then we'll ask the McCains what they're doing, and she'll say, well, John's in Afghanistan, and I'm going to the Eastern Congo, but we'll be back next weekend, so we'll see you then. So anyway, it's a remarkable privilege to be able to introduce Cindy. Governor Christie, what a star he is on the political horizon. He just had a tremendous victory in New Jersey, a resounding victory in a state where his party was in the great minority. But he proved himself a hero, a leader, and a man of the people during the tragedy of Hurricane Sandy. He showed up and he did what was right. He embraced people. He helped them on the road to rebuilding, and he really became America's governor for a period of time. Governor Christie, born and raised in New Jersey, only left New Jersey to live in Delaware for 4 years when he went to the University of Delaware, met his wife, wonderful wife, Mary Pat there. He then came back. He entered significant public service when he was appointed as United States Attorney in September of 2001, and had a very successful career as a U.S. Attorney with a record of something like 130 convictions and no acquittals. He's done a remarkable job for the state of New Jersey, and if you'd permit me, I'm going to read a quote of his that he had in his address to the Republican convention, which I think sums up what he's all about. The quote: "We are the great-grandchildren of the people who broke their backs in the name of American ingenuity, the grandchildren of the greatest generation, the sons and daughters of immigrants, the brothers and sisters of everyday heroes, the neighbors of entrepreneurs and firefighters, teachers, farmers, veterans, factory workers, and everyone in between who shows up not just on the big days, but on the bad days and the hard days, each and every day, all 365 of them. Governor Christie shows up in force, all 365. So it's my great pleasure now to introduce Cindy McCain and Governor Chris Christie.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Before we get going, and I know I have a lot of questions for Governor Christie, but I'd like our Arizona Human Trafficking Task Force members to please stand up and show your faces and let us acknowledge you for the hard work that you have done on this. And it's just the beginning. Governor, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
We, as a group of people that are working specifically on human trafficking, look to you this year because New Jersey has the next run at the Super Bowl. And so we'd like to hear from you about not only what's going on, but how you have accomplished what you have accomplished in this short time and what your goal is, the long-term goal.
Well, I mean, first off, it's hard, I think, for folks in this country to grasp the fact that the Super Bowl is the biggest human trafficking event of the year in the United States. And it's extraordinary to think that we will have young women, young men enslaved by folks who are coming to enjoy a football game. The connection is interesting because it's really almost any big event that this happens in. And the biggest problem we have, and I can go through some of the legislation that we've passed, some of the work that we've done, I'm sure we'll talk about that over the course of our conversation, but I think the biggest thing for people here to make sure you grasp is why this is so difficult to uncover. Remember that most of these young men and women come from countries where law enforcement is corrupt. And so when they come to this country, usually under the promise of a better life, a free life, a prosperous life in America, and they get here and their passports are taken. All their identity is stolen. They're put into either the sex trade or sometimes just other types of involuntary servitude, 12, 14 hours a day. It's not only that they have fear for their family back home, because most of the time what these folks will do is threaten them by saying, we know where your mother lives, we know where your father lives, we know where your brothers and sisters are. If you don't do what we tell you, we'll have them killed. Imagine being a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old young man or woman and being faced with that choice. Secondly, they don't go to law enforcement because they think law enforcement's part of the problem. Because in their countries, law enforcement's corrupt. And so people say, why don't they say something? They run across a police officer or someone that can help them. Well, they believe that they're all in, and the captors reinforce that belief. They know the culture in their home country, and they reinforce the belief. And so the reason this is so problematic and difficult is that normal law enforcement techniques are relatively ineffective in this way. And that's why we have to do a lot of other different things that we've been trying to do. And when you also bring into it the event of a Super Bowl, all the hundreds of thousands of people, both who work the event and who are going to the event, who come into an area like New Jersey or next year, like here in Arizona, law enforcement's focused on a lot of other things. And part of, I think, what our effort is in New Jersey, and I know what yours is going to be here, is to make sure that we put some of that focus on preventing this, because this ruins lives. Absolutely ruins lives.
It does. You did some interesting things with your legislation, though. You have encouraged the use of the hotline and posting of the hotline. You've encouraged a whole lot of things that are, what I view as part of the NGO community in all of this. I think that's innovative, and I also think it's really necessary. Yep. And we're hoping that our governor does the same thing. She's been a remarkable supporter on this for us, and we hope to have good things come out of this.
Yep.
What is the difficulty in your proximity to Manhattan? How does this wind into this?
Well, it's kind of the situation that we have in New Jersey and then our proximity to New York City also. So first start with New Jersey. We are the most densely populated state in America. Secondly, we are the most ethnically diverse state in America. So what does this mean for human trafficking? What it means is that you can hide in plain sight. Yeah. No matter what ethnicity you are, there is a neighborhood in New Jersey, usually a dense urban neighborhood in New Jersey, where you look like everybody else and you sound like everybody else. So as a result, for law enforcement, it's very difficult to discern who might be there by choice and who's there through coercion. Secondly, then with New York City, the airports in New York and New Jersey, the three major airports, Kennedy, LaGuardia, and Newark Liberty, combined are the busiest air traffic point in the country. And so policing those people coming in and out is incredibly challenging. You add the ethnic diversity and density of New York City and the ease of movement over the Hudson River, the opportunity to hide folks and to evade law enforcement is incredible. We have 8.8 million people in New Jersey. You have 8.4 million people just in the city of New York. So in that northern metropolitan area, of our 8.8 million folks, about 6 million live in the northern portion of our state. So you're talking about, in that area, about 14 million people in a very small area of real estate.
Well, obviously your two first responders from both Manhattan and from New Jersey have to work closely together. Have they, in terms of coordinating, I'm assuming they've gone through a training process that included both teams at the same time. And what was your opinion of how they were trained, and are they trained well enough? Because we're dealing with this here.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
Not yet. Listen, the training is the hardest part. Now, Paul Charlton here is the U.S. Attorney in Arizona when I was U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. And while we have great admiration and respect for the agents and officers that we worked with, what we also would tell you at a really honest moment is trying to change their point of view on certain things is a process at times. And the training for human trafficking is different. You know, it's different. You have to use different techniques to try to figure it out because of the lack of trust issue, because of the lack of transparency that we talked about. I think what's happened in our state, part of the challenge is that the NYPD is a big organization. And so the training doesn't happen together. What we're trying to do through the legislation we did and in cooperation with Mayor Bloomberg is to say there should be consistency in that training. They won't be able to do it together, but there should be a consistency in message on trafficking that can help us to be able to work across the river together and use the same type of techniques so that it's more seamless. But that's one of the real challenges, because remember, you also have federal agents involved that I don't have jurisdiction over as a governor. So you need to bring the U.S. Attorney into play and the special agent in charge of the FBI and the other federal agencies that get involved in this. So from a law enforcement perspective, it's a very complex challenge. The help of the Super Bowl is that all those people were in the same room for the Super Bowl. Right? It's a national security event. The Secret Service takes the lead, coordinates, and brings all those different agencies together. And so what we've tried to do in New Jersey is to make this a priority to the Super Bowl host committee and to the Secret Service in their protection of the event, and we've been successful at that. And so I think that you'll see some good results that come out of that joint work that you'll have the same opportunity to do in Arizona when they turn their attention on February 3rd or to here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, with that, we face something here that is a national issue, but the owners are here in Arizona, and this is this publication called Backpage.com. Mm-hmm. And the task force spent a lot of time on this particular issue. They came and actually testified in front of us, which they had not done before. And I mean, this is Craigslist had the foresight and the decency to stop selling children and women on the internet. Backpage has not. In fact, they've increased their involvement in this, and to all of us said that they are not doing anything wrong. In fact, they're helping the police by staying in business. How do you get around? I'm not trying to get around the First Amendment, but what do you do with something like that?
Well, we face this challenge in New Jersey. We passed a law in New Jersey that went after this was overturned by the federal courts. And so it is a really sticky First Amendment issue, and the federal courts in the District of New Jersey overturned the legislation that we passed that was very aggressive against organizations like this. Listen, I think that as public officials and as community leaders, the only thing that will change their conduct is shame. You need to loudly and clearly shame them. They may have a First Amendment right to do what they do, but you have a First Amendment right to shame them. And I try to remind these folks all the time, the First Amendment works both ways.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I agree.
So, my point of view is that they do some things that are absolutely reprehensible and disgusting and injurious to innocent people. And so, if they're engaged in that conduct, getting a little verbal abuse from me is like the least they should get in return, And I think and they can hardly complain. They hardly have standing to complain. So, I think non-governmental organizations also need to be involved in speaking out. And speaking out about this. Public shame can change conduct. And as long as it's fact-based, and believe me, we have plenty of facts on our side to be able to make it fact-based, we can begin to change attitudes and also have public pressure go upon a group like Backpage to change their practices as so many other organizations have, based upon perhaps decency of their own, but also I don't doubt for a second that public pressure had something to do with it.
Well, we were astounded because during their testimony, Andrew Pacheco, where are you, Andrew? Was diligently working on his iPhone when the lawyer said, well, we field everything. There's nothing gets on there that we haven't looked at and clearly gone through, and there's nothing bad going on. And Andrew pulled it up on his iPhone while we were sitting there. And so the problem that we have here is that the owners are based here, which is very embarrassing, I think, as someone who's from this state, and I think everyone else. But also, they're such a big moneymaker that they are able to hire the people and the lawyers and all the other stuff to shield them from just what you said. Do you think we should have federal involvement in trying to stop this thing?
Well, it's an interesting constitutional question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the Congress should be grappling with this issue. The fact is, we tried to do it in New Jersey, and we got reversed by the federal courts in our state. Yeah. So the question is going to be whether or not laws being changed is going to be permitted to change that conduct. I tend to think, given what we tried to do, that that's not going to be the way to go. That ultimately it's going to have to be publicly shaming these folks, because I think that they get emboldened every time they reverse an action, and I think they double up their efforts. So I think we may have to take a different tack. Now, there might be some federal constitutional lawyers, which I am not one, who might argue to you there's a way to narrowly tailor this at the federal level to get it done. I'm not expert enough in that to be able to give an opinion, but what I will say is that I know for sure there's not going to be anybody who's going to overturn our ability to be able to call these folks out and take them from the back page and put them on the front page. I think that would be,
I like that. Thank you. That's a great line. I love that. I'm going to steal that from you. I like that. I'm a big mouth. I can do that.
Good.
With this, I mean, here, particularly on the border, we deal with all kinds of issues regarding border issues and immigration, as you do in New Jersey. How do you think, or do you think, there is a problem with human trafficking flowing, not just our southern border, but over our northern border? Is this I've been told different things about this, that really that's not the issue. It's more about internal trafficking. What's your opinion on whether or not the borders, how they play in this?
Our experience is that it's every port of entry.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're talking about the southern border or the border with Canada, or whether you're talking about a New York City airport or an airport in St. Louis, Missouri. It happens everywhere. It happens in every urban area of this country.
Every neighborhood.
You bet.
And
it is absolutely true. And so while I think there's validity to the discussion of the border, I think that's misunderstanding the scope of the problem.
Yeah.
The scope is much larger than a border crossing problem. This is an organized effort at something that's been going on in our world forever, which is greed for free labor that creates exorbitant profit. That's what this is. And, in some ways, we don't have to make it more complicated than what it is. These folks set up criminal enterprises in order to exploit free labor for their own exorbitant profit. That's what it is. And it's worse than other types of greed because this is greed that causes injury that's permanent to the people who are involved and that many of them never get over. So I think the border is an issue, but it's no more an issue than New York City or New Jersey airports or St. Louis airports or Minneapolis airports. You know, you can fly them in from any place in the world. They come up with the plan to be able to bring them in. And a lot of these, remember, when we did a bunch of these cases in New Jersey when I was U.S. Attorney, and a lot of the women, we had a big case where the women themselves testified. Mm-hmm. And they had been in servitude for years in the sex trade. And we had, I'll never forget this one woman, 19 years old, been in servitude since she was 15. And imagine the power of a young woman sitting on the witness stand in a federal courtroom in Newark, New Jersey, with the defendant sitting at the table and saying, I was forced to perform 10 to 12 sex acts a day, 6 days a week, for 3 years. And all she basically got was minimally sustaining food and water. She was not allowed to speak. If she spoke to the other girls in the place, she was beaten. When she went out with an assigned master who watched her every move. I mean, this is what we're talking about, everybody. We're not talking about anything other than abject slavery of people. And I remember sitting in that courtroom and listening to her testify, and you could see that jury. And they did what they needed to do, which was to send the people who perpetrated this crime to jail for 30 years after the end of that trial. So we need to understand the scope of this, and it's not just it's an Arizona, New Mexico, Texas problem. Yeah. It's not. It's a problem in every corner of this country, and because of America's greatness, this is why it happens. I'll stop my answer because I know I'm going on for a bit here.
That's okay.
But it's America's greatness that lures them here. These criminals play on people's heartfelt desire to come to this country and be free. They come from often economically depressed, socially repressed countries where America is the absolute shining light for them and their hope for a better and different life than their parents or grandparents have had. And they play on that aspiration and on America's greatness to lure these young people and then to entrap them and enslave them for their own profit. If there's anything more amoral than playing on someone's dreams in order to destroy them, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Once you all are able to rescue or save a victim in whatever capacity it happens, what capacity do you have to then help them move on with their lives?
It's been great partnership in New Jersey with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is the non-governmental organization that's taken the boldest lead in our state on this, creating safe houses for these young men and women to live in as they're getting psychiatric treatment and medical treatment and getting real nutrition to get themselves to a point. I mean, most of these folks don't even have clothes, except the clothes on their back. And the Archdiocese in Newark in New Jersey has been incredibly active in setting up all of these functions. And our State Department of Human Services has partnered with the Catholic Church to provide psychological, psychiatric services as appropriate. Our Department of Agriculture to be able to provide the right types of nutrition for them right at the beginning when they're saved. And it's a months-long process. These girls I was just talking about who testified in that case, they lived in this halfway house for 6 months. It took that long just to kind of stabilize them, to get them ready to re-enter normal society. The other thing that the Human Trafficking Act, the federal act, permits is special visas for their families, so that what we also then facilitate along with federal law enforcement is once they're saved and they're safe, we then get information from them about where are their families, and there are special visas that bring their families to the United States so that they can create a nurturing relationship, an atmosphere for this victim. And so it's not that they have to stay here by themselves, but for those who want to stay, we bring their families here and they get to live here under special visas that have been set up under the Act. And that's extraordinarily helpful in their recovery, is to get a parent or parents or a brother or sister, whoever's available to them, to come here and not have to worry about going through the really cumbersome process of entering the country, but to know that they have a special type of visa just for them, to take care of their loved one who is a victim.
A large portion of the young men and women that we find in rescue, I mean these gracious, lovely people that work this every day on the streets, they can get them maybe into a facility, but the difficulty is how we're funding it, how they can get help, do they have the right licensing? So Arizona is really struggling with kind of being able to make this an easier process for these girls and boys, and making sure that they are helped significantly before we turn them out. But we deal with more domestic out here, so the portion of that we need to work on, again, is our state's trying to figure all of this out right now, and I know our governor is working on it very hard.
Yep.
May I change the subject just a bit?
Sure.
All right, if I may. We talked about comprehensive immigration, and as you know, the Senate voted on it, and then the House won't even hear it. How do we begin to work with a Senate and a House that won't even talk to each other and won't even agree to disagree on anything?
Well, you know, listen.
If he can answer this, we're good.
Well, let's start off with what I think the causation of the disease is.
Yeah.
The first causation of the disease is a lack of presidential leadership. You see, I work with a Democratic legislature every day, 24 to 16 in the Senate, 48 to 32 in the lower house. So it's not close. If I wait for them, and it's not just because they're Democrats, it would be the same way if they were Republicans. If I wait for them to lead on an issue, I'll be waiting for my entire career. Legislative bodies are absolutely, I think by design, ill-disposed to provide leadership. And so you start off with that as the premise and see a president now who simply refuses to engage. If he's uncomfortable, he refuses to engage. Or he engages only in the politics of it. That's a problem. If you want bipartisanship, the president is the one who has to lead on bipartisanship the way the governor in a state has to lead on bipartisanship. I'm the one who has to show I'm willing to compromise. I'm the one who has to bring people into the room and keep them there until we come to an agreement. I'm the one who's got to lay out the broad vision of where we're heading. And even though there'll be disagreements on the road to the accomplishment of that vision, the executive has to lead in that regard. Second, these folks in Congress don't talk to each other anymore.
Right.
And there's almost like a penalty for being friends with somebody on the other side. And, you know, politics is simple. It really is. We don't make anything. We don't produce anything of value, right? All we have are relationships. Trusting relationships which forge compromise, which develop and bring about accomplishment. That's it. If we don't have that, we got nothing. And that's why Congress is at 9% popularity today. The only thing that surprises me about Congress being at 9% popularity is, like, I would love to get like a whole slew of former federal agents who are now retired and want something to do. I want you to find the 9%. Right? I want you to find
Paid staff and blood relatives.
Right? I want you to find the 9% of the people who go, I love this.
Yeah.
This is good. What's going on down there right now? Fabulous. I want more of it, you know? I'd like to just bring a sample of those 9% into a room and just talk to them for a few minutes. Like, really? I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. You look at this and you go, I love this. You know, I I love the idea that they don't talk to each other. I love that they don't pass anything. I love that the majority tramples on the rights of the minority. I love that the minority obstructs the vision of the majority. I love this. This is great stuff. Let's have more, you know? It is such an abject failure at this point, whether it's immigration reform or whether it's any of the other issues, tax reform that we need, entitlement reform that we desperately need for our country to be secure and long-term economically. All of the difficult issues that need to be addressed, nobody wants to address them because they're too busy fighting with each other and raising money for their PACs and sending out press releases that mischaracterize and attack the other side, and then holding press conferences. You know, there's two places that if I were the ultimate ruler of the world that I would love to get rid of. One is that bank of microphones that apparently is outside the House of Representatives in the United States Senate, where they all come to pontificate. They rush to them to, like, you know, the most dangerous, 10 yards in Washington, D.C., right? Don't get in between those men and women and that set of microphones where they all sit, like, with bated breath waiting for the next, horrible thing to be said about the other side. And the bank of microphones outside the West Wing of the White House, where they all come out after a pretend meeting and then say awful things, right? I feel like if you could ban those two areas, that you'd really start to make progress, you know? So I think the problem is that in the end, the federal guys are not required to produce any results. You would never, ever put up with this from a governor. Ever. If I just was in the corner holding my breath and saying, well, I don't agree with them, they don't agree with me, the hell with it. I'm going to play golf, I'm going to raise some money, I'll put out some pithy press releases, and then I'm done. I would be done. My rear end would be on the curb at the next election, and rightfully so. So I think part of it is that we've come to accept too little and demand too little, and we don't really truly reward the people who are willing to step across the aisle. We say we want it. I saw this in New Jersey in my last election. We had 60-plus elected officials, Democrats, elected Democrats, endorse me publicly for re-election. Those men and women were so excoriated by the press and by other Democrats for supporting a Republican. And I say all the time, well, so you want bipartisanship, right? The newspapers write all the time, we want bipartisan. If only they could be bipartisan. Read the editorial pages, I don't care whether it's here in Arizona or in New Jersey or any place in between. They all want bipartisanship. But when someone does it, they say, oh, there must be something fishy there. I mean, these people are getting accused of, well, we'd like to know what deals were made in the back room there for them to support this Republican. Like, well, you can't have it both ways, man. If you're going to excoriate people for being bipartisan, they're not stupid. They won't be bipartisan then. We have to create an atmosphere, like we do in a lot of these states, that says, you know what? What we expect you to do is do your job. Get your job done first. And I don't care, quite frankly, how you do it, as long as it's legal and ethical. Get it done. And that's it.
I agree. You had a remarkable re-election, and what a lot of us enjoyed watching was the percentage of the Hispanic vote that you gained through this. This is not the case in other parts of the country and with other Republican candidates. What would your advice be to the Republican Party about inclusion of Hispanics and other minorities and conducting elections in a way that, because you were such an inspiration to folks around the country.
Thanks. Show up.
Yeah, show up, I agree.
Show up. I mean, listen, I won 51% of the Hispanic vote in New Jersey. I won 21% of the African American vote after getting 7% of the African American vote 4 years ago. So we tripled the African American vote. Well, how? I showed up for 4 years. I showed up. I went and listened. And I told them what I thought. Sometimes they agreed, sometimes they didn't. But I think that what's happened to us as a party is We refuse any longer to campaign in uncomfortable places. We always want to campaign where we're comfortable.
Yeah.
Let's get to the Chamber of Commerce. Come on. All right? Let's do that Chamber of Commerce lunch. We Republicans, we're comfy there. No problem, right? No, nothing wrong with that. I love being at the Chamber of Commerce lunch, and I love their support. But if we want to broaden our party, we have to go to places where we're uncomfortable. And it is uncomfortable. Let's not pretend it's not uncomfortable. When you initially go there, it's uncomfortable. I did a town hall meeting in a city in my state called Irvington. Now, Irvington is about a 20,000 person city. It is predominantly African American. And in 2009, I got 4.7% of the vote in Irvington. So I went as governor, and I did 108 town hall meetings when I was in my first 4 years. And I did one of them in Irvington at the Christian Love Baptist Church. And I asked the pastor if I could come and do a town hall meeting there. He agreed. When I showed up there that day, I said to him, "So, Pastor, how many people are here?" And he said, it's a huge crowd, Governor. The entire church is filled, and we had to set up an overflow room with a TV screen. We have 550 people here. In 2009, 486 people voted for me in Irvington. We had more people in the room for my town hall meeting than had voted for me. Now, most of the time when you're governor and you walk into a town hall meeting, there's people stand, there's raucous applause, kind of like what you all did for me and Mrs. McCain. We walked in here, right? It's really great. I walked in to the Christian Love Baptist Church that day, and it went something like this. Ladies and gentlemen, the 55th governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie. So I walked out onto the altar, not to my usual reception. And if any politician tells you that that moment they're comfortable, they're lying. You're sweating, you're worried, and I'm looking out at a bunch of people, not like this group right now. I was looking at a bunch of people like this.
I've been to a few
Okay,
of those.
buddy, bring it. Let's see what you got, right? So I started off by telling them that I'd gotten 4.7% of the vote in Irvington in 2009, and that I know some of you consider my policies divisive. Some of you may disagree with me on a whole range of issues, but I'm not divisive because I got 4.7% of the vote in Irvington. That means I united 95% of the people of Irvington. I brought them together for my opponent. And they all laughed like you did, and then we started to listen to each other. See, in the end, I don't think people vote based upon writing on a yellow legal pad with a line down the middle, here are the pros, here are the cons. I don't think that's the way people vote. I think the way people vote is from here. First, they got to know you and trust you. Think that you believe in them and care about them, and maybe understand their life a little bit. Then they might go to the pro and con list after that. But if you don't get past that threshold, you no chance. They're never going, I don't know him all that well and I don't trust him. I don't think he necessarily cares about me, but boy, I like his position on X, so I'm going to vote for him. Because what they think is that your position on X is probably BS because they don't know you, they don't trust you. So as a Republican Party, I think we have to campaign in places where we're uncomfortable. And we can't expect in this 24-hour cable, instant gratification society that we're going to get great numbers right away. Yeah. I showed up in the campaign in 2009 and got 4.7% in Irvington. What happened this time? 18% in Irvington. 18%. Now, some people look at it and go, 18%? You got killed. 80 to 18. The independents picked up a few votes. 80 to 18, you got killed. I said, no, man. I quadrupled my vote nearly in Irvington. I nearly quadrupled it. That's pretty good. That's the way we have to look at it as a party, because if what we're expecting is instant gratification and immediate success, we're going to fail. So people say, how did you get to 61% in a blue state that Barack Obama won with 58% a year earlier? Show up and listen, and don't vilify people because they disagree with you. disagree with them, and I disagree with them plenty in public. And any of you have seen, me, I'm not a shy, retiring guy, and I'm not someone who's reluctant to express my views or to get in a good fight every once in a while, or more than every once in a while. But there's a difference. I'll end with this one. One woman said to me during the campaign, I went up to her at a diner in New Jersey, and I said, I'm Chris Christie. She goes, I know who you are, Governor. And I said, well, I'd love to have your support. And she said to me, well, she said, I disagree with you on a lot of issues. And I said, oh, this is not going to go well. And, and she said to me, but you know what? She said, you do what you say you're going to do, and I trust you, so I'm going to vote for you anyway. That happens because you can't get, like I did, a third of the Democrat vote. A third of the Democrats who voted for me. You can't get that based just on issues because we don't agree. But that's not the way people vote. It just isn't. And as Republicans, if we continue to think, and this is what tends to, last point, tends to make people contort themselves, because they think, okay, I believe this, but you believe that. All right, so I got to look in your eyes and try to figure out what is it that you want to hear. And then I'm going to figure it out because I'm good. All right, I'm good at this. I'm a politician and a pretty good one. I'm going to figure it out. And then I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. And then I'm going to pray to God you forget that I told you I'd do it when I don't. We're encouraging that type of conduct. What we need to encourage is, I tell you what I think. And if what I tell you is opposite of your single most important position that you care about the most, then I need to invite you to vote for the other guy. Vote for the other guy. But I'm not going to contort myself into a pretzel to comply with what you want. I'm not going to do it. And too many of our politicians have gotten ourselves in that position. And it just isn't ultimately successful. Voters don't believe you then.
Yeah.
And then when you don't have credibility, you're finished in this business, because it goes back to what I said before, we don't make anything. So if all we have is our trust and our credibility and our backbone, and we give that away for a title, then they're not going to, they're going to, what you become then in politics at that point is what my old high school history professor used to say. He said, a leader without followers is just a guy out for a walk.
That's true. Oh
If they don't believe you believe in anything anymore, why will they follow you? Some people will follow you even if they don't agree with everything you believe. But they believe in you. They believe in you. And that's kind of where we need to get to as a party. I think our most effective leaders have been folks who created in the public for a moment or for a longer period of time the sense that he or she cares about me, understands me, and has a clear idea of who they are and where they want to lead. You create that, you create a movement. You don't create that, you lose.
Yeah, you're very right.
It's not that much, it's not complicated.
Yeah.
And it's not about any one issue. Don't look for this, if Republicans only did fill in the blank. If we think that just by having immigration reform, we're going to win the Hispanic vote, like that's going to be some kind of magic thing, I would suggest to you that that's insulting Hispanic voters all over this country to think that that's the only way they decide how to vote. The fact is that they want to have a seat at the table, to influence policy, not to always get their way, but to influence policy, be taken seriously, be listened to. And then you can start to try to bring them onto your movement. So that's what I think our party needs to do.
Thank you. Thank you. I see staff in the corner all going like this. That's usually the universal sign for let's get rolling. Thank you so much for coming. Our task force and the rest of the folks in Arizona that are really trying to stop human trafficking are very excited to see what comes out of New Jersey with this event and onward from there. And we look forward to working with you as well.
Me too.
And we really appreciate you taking time for being here, because I know your schedule is just crazy right now. And my best to your family.
Thank you.
I know public life can be challenging at times, and be nice to your wife. Thank you so much.
I'll tell her you said that.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for the chance. It's really great.